Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter's Jack Dorsey were once again on Capitol Hill today, but virtually. The two CEOs were facing a fired-up GOP-led Senate Judiciary Committee that was pushing the two for more clarity around their content moderation policies.
Our policy is focused on misleading information around the election and the civic process to provide greater context, to provide additive information so that people can make decisions around what's happening within the election. And that is three phases. That's the run up to the election, that's election day, and also the phase we're in right now, post-election. So our policies and enforcement are focused on providing more information, more context to people in those three phases.
Here with more is Bloomberg News reporter Sarah Fryer, who covers Facebook for us in San Francisco. This is the first time Zuckerberg and Dorsey were back in the hot seat after the U.S. election. We know both companies enforced rules around misinformation. How did senators talk about those rules?
Well, there was really broad agreement across senators from both Republican and Democrat sides that there needs to be something done about the fact that these companies have so much power over our national discourse. However, they very vastly disagreed on what the problem was. Republicans think that the problem is that Facebook and Twitter have weighed in too much. They've labeled tweets that are full of misinformation. They've redirected people to factual information. Republicans were saying, that means you guys are publishers of this information and you shouldn't have Section 230 protection. That's the Communications Decency Act that says that they don't necessarily have to be held liable for the content. Democrats, on the other hand, were concerned that the tech companies are allowing too much illegal, misleading content, harmful content on their websites. So the tech companies came in, they said, listen, we understand that this is not an ideal situation. However, we don't have the solution. We want to work with you on something. And there wasn't really a lot of resolution from this few hours of testimony from the CEOs of Twitter and Facebook.
I mean, I really want to know, though, how did this differ from October's hearing?
It was a lot less tense.
Okay.
In October, I think people were still very fired up about the election. And I think in this hearing, I saw a lot more conciliatory tone from the Republicans of willingness to work with Democrats on whatever would happen next. They seem to be kind of understanding that Trump lost the election. They're not trying to necessarily bully companies before about their content moderation. What's done is done. So now they're trying to figure out, is there anti-conservative bias? We're kind of back to the conversation we were having a few months ago about whether these companies disproportionately remove content from conservatives. But it was a lot less yelling than it was just a couple of weeks ago. Just a couple of weeks ago. So take us through exactly how Facebook and Twitter are moderating content right now. Well, Twitter has been taking a piece-by-piece approach. So say Donald Trump tweets that there is election fraud. They may put a label on that, or they may obscure it and prevent it from being shared or retweeted. On Facebook, there's a more broad-based approach where every post about the election ends up with a label on it that says, please visit this Facebook information center that has third-party information about exactly who got what electoral votes where, and tries to clear up some of the misconceptions about mail-in voting and say, there's no real evidence of fraud here. The approach is Twitter is almost explicitly saying when you get misinformation from Trump that is false. Facebook is simply saying, go here for more. And sometimes the Facebook label can look like an endorsement, but again, it is more broad-based.
So if you could tell us something very quick, what would be the next step?
The next step is to see if any of the extra measures that these companies took during the election carry over into, past inauguration. Once Trump is a private citizen, does he get banned for violating rules? I think that we're going to see a lot of interesting decisions of what they roll back and what they maintain in place, because they realize that it has made us maybe a little less testy to not have this viral misinformation.
Sarah Frier, thank you so much for joining us.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.